All right, hey everybody. We are in True North Moto's garage here, checking out a new bike. Dan, what do we got here?
So this is a 2022 Husqvarna FE350s. So this is the street legal from the factory 350 Enduro bike.
All right, let's talk about the things you really love about this bike. What's so great about this bike?
The 350 is one of the best four-strokes that can still ride on the road decently well. I mean, they rev way out, they have super tractable, usable power, and they're just a great all-around bike. What I love about this bike is Husqvarna gives you the nice preload adjusters, which they've been doing for a few years, which you don't get on some of the KTM models. You have a linkage versus a PDS, which works better in whoops and high-speed G-outs, things like that. Pertaining to the 2022 model, what do I really like? I like the gray. I like the gray frame, I like the gray seat, the gray handguards.
That's a sharp-looking bike.
I really like the overall look of the bike and the graphics that they did on the 2022 model. Now, things I would change personally about this bike if it was mine. This is a dealer borrowed bike that we're going to be building a rack off of, but this is my personal bike. Instantly, things that would have to go. Tires. These are TKC 80 dual sport tires. Great on the road, terrible everywhere else. So, if you want to do true dual sport, you're going to ride on some road, but you ride more gravel roads and things like that, maybe a set of D606 tires. If you want more, I ride mostly on trails and gravel and just a little bit of pavement. I'd probably go to like a Golden tire, 216 front and a 333 rear. If you don't care about DOT compliance and you want to throw the best trail tires you can on here, I'd probably do like an IRC JX8 gummy in the back and maybe a VX30 in the front. So just kind of pick tires on your preference. These bikes have thin tubes from the factory. They're a 1mm tube for the thickness of the actual rubber on the tube. So again, if you're dual sporting, you don't want to deal with tubeless or moose and the cost and everything with that and the maintenance, buy some ultra heavy duty tubes. They're a 4mm tube, way more puncture resistant than the factory tubes. After I did that, there is about 15 to 20% more horsepower in these bikes after you uncork them, delete the emissions, and get an aftermarket tuner or a complete replacement ECU like a Git, Vortex, or now the new AIM that's out. Do you need that right away? No. Go ride the damn bike, you just bought it. Have fun, see if the power is enough for you. Don't need to change the exhaust or do anything. But if you do change the exhaust and you do desmog it, make sure you put a tuner on this thing because it's going to run lean, dangerously lean. So if it was me, I've ridden stock bikes for quite a bit of time when I bought them and I like the extra power, so I uncork them right away and I do an aftermarket ECU. Next thing I would do is get rid of these because they're going to get broken off the first time you actually ride off-road. You can go with like a double take mirror like on our website, which would thread right into this insert and you can fold it down. You could do the full HDB replacement handguards that have swing out mirrors. You can do the double take little trail mirrors that go right here. But just this right away gets broken in my type of riding.
And if that's bad, how about the floating television set here at the back?
So if you remember playing 007 on your flat screen that was 4 feet deep, that's what this is. The nice thing about the new Huskies KTMs is that this is actually a two-piece plastic part. So to convert this to a TE style 300E with just this taillight and this under fender, is just coming under here, dropping your sub fender, unplugging your signals, unbolting this, and unbolting your taillight, and this whole drop down piece goes away. Then you can just bolt your taillight with some shorter bolts that you will have to source. They're a 25mm K60 if I remember correctly. They might be a 20mm. Bolt your new taillight to just the factory TE piece that's right here. So Very easy and simple to just do a tail tidy on this with no money. You will have to either get some of our very nice TNM signals that go on the side of this thing, or maybe a tail tidy or plate mount signals, or you will have to drill new holes in the side of your plastic to mount your stock signals back in here. Free tail tidy though. You don't need to buy a new plastic piece for the back like you did on the 17
Cool.
through
So
19 bikes.
True North Motos has this big lineup of different turn signals and things like that, where you can take the street legal version of a Husky or a KTM and get rid of this monstrosity, tighten it all up so that it's a little bit more off-road worthy while staying street legal.
Yep, and then also you can do things like the Enduro Plate, which is a flip-up plate mount, so it's not going to break your plate off when you're doing a tail tidy. I don't have one out right now, but a moto-minded flex plate, or like a KTM hard plate mount to do the new plate on here. Otherwise, you'd have to cut apart this piece and then remount it to the new TE style underfender.
Right. Now, so this bike here, the FE350, is the S version. So Husky sells a 350 and then the S version. So what's the difference between the two? Why does one person buy one or the other?
So the S version is going to be street legal in 50 states. So if you're from...
It follows California law, right?
Correct. So if you're from California, buy this bike.
You have to,
You have to.
because otherwise you can't plate the other one.
Yep. For me, in Washington, and specializing in what we do at True North Motos, I wouldn't buy the S model. And the reason why, well, on the standard FE model, you get actual dirt bike tires. You get a map switch that gives you two different maps with traction control. And you get a better tune on your bike. So it's just gonna run better from the factory. You won't have mirrors, you won't have all these switches, you'll just have a push button start and a push button kill, but we can add our street legal kit to that bike and have a more streamlined, better bike from the factory. Saying that, the FE350 still has reeds in the intake and it still has emission stuff on it, but it just runs better than the S model.
So bottom line is, buy the street version if you live in a state where you're not allowed or capable of plating the off-road models of the KTM, Husky, gas line, or even Honda, Yamaha, or whatever, right?
Yep, that's definitely my recommendation.
So in Washington State, you just should not be buying this. But in Oregon and California, you should be buying this one and then converting it into the off-road vehicle.
That's all going to depend on your application. One thing that this offers, say in Washington State versus a standard FE model, is resale value. So resale value is going to be higher, probably $500 at least, than a standard off-road model because it's street legal from the factory, and that it commands more money. So you just have to realize what's going to work best for you. Do I want to change my tires out right away? Do I need to have it street legal from the factory?
Okay, what are the bulbs on these things like now? Right there.
It's got a good reflector housing. It's still got a terrible candle for a bulb.
All right, so to replace that bulb?
Yeah, Cyclops LED Ultra bulb.
Yep.
Put that in.
So these things are still just a little candle, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So how about the suspension? How are the forks? What do we got in this thing?
So you got Explorer forks on the front. You got Explorer linkage shock on the back. These are valved soft. So if you're riding tight trails and you're not pushing really hard through whoops or hitting big jumps and stuff, probably going to work good for you. For me, I find them way too soft for valving, so I like to stiffen mine up and get a revalve done. I should have said this at the start of the video. The number one thing you can do for your bike, buy springs for your weight when you're wearing all of your gear and you're stepping on a scale. That's your water in your backpack, your tools in your backpack, everything.
The weight on these is typically sprung for somebody that weighs how much off the factory floor?
160 to 187 pounds.
Most people don't weigh that.
I weigh 205 in my street clothes. When I put all my gear on, I'm 230. Okay. I have to go up 2 to 3 spring rate sizes in this bike to even make it handle.
Roughly, what's the cost of respringing a bike?
$300 in springs, front and rear for both front and rear springs. and it's very easy to do by yourself if you have the tools. We're actually probably going to make a video on how to change out the springs on the KTM and the Husky models, so you can look for that on our YouTube site. But to pay somebody to do it, it would probably be $100, $150.
Is the suspension the same on the 350S as the off-road?
Yes.
Okay, so it's exactly the same.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly the same.
Now, I've owned two 350s personally. I've owned two 300s. I've had a couple of 450s. One thing I really like about the 350 is it is a very good bike in alpine single track. It's got the power, but there's something about the balance of the motor. It doesn't feel like a big CC bike like a 500 or 450. And it's got that, you know, easygoing power band in the mountains. So it gets good traction, stable.
Good mileage.
It gets good mileage. And it, you know, if you gear it right, you know, you can take it on the freeway and do 75, 80, 85 miles an hour. You know, not something you really want to do with two-stroke, but there's a place for this bike, and it's a very capable bike.
One other thing I would do, if you can notice, right here, if you see the steering stops and how most KTM and Huskies are set up from the factory, they're way out, right? So that limits how tight you can turn on single track switchbacks. You can yank them all the way out. Before you yank them all the way out, or when you do, just make sure to turn your bars lock to lock, and that you're not pinching any wiring or hitting any radiator guards you might have put on or anything like that. If you can't yank them all the way out, you can also take the bolt all the way out, take the lock nut off of the bolt, and just put the bolt all the way in to get even more steering lock. But this isn't going to turn worth a crap. So crank these at least in to the steering lock, but you can take them a lot of the cases all the way out depending on what you're running, and you're not going to hit.
How about let's go over what kind of guards should a person, what are some of the must-have guards that you might want to buy aftermarket wise on this bike?
Comes with a skid plate. It's okay. It's pretty thin plastic. It does come up and kind of protect over here. I always run a skid plate with a built-in linkage protector. If you know,
this one doesn't have it, so this is not protected right here,
and you can also
unless you buy the link protector.
Yep, and you can tell on a KTM and a Husky, their linkage hangs down lower than Yamaha, Sherco, the other bikes. So this will catch if you're riding off-road and doing log crossing, rocks, things like that. My preferred skid plate setup is SXS, hands down. Good company, just not that far from us, and super quality products that just fold up. Other guards, pick different, you know, flags if you're going to run flags, if you're not a wraparound handguard person, or different handguards, whether it be HDB, you know, Cycras, whatever your preference is. I prefer the HDBs if I'm doing wraparounds. Another good one is the Reflex Racing wraparounds I do like, or the SXS Burley flags will bolt right to the mount that's already on here.
Stock seat on this bike is a nice one. I have this generation on one of my bikes. It's pretty good. But if you want something really comfortable, you can get an upgraded seat concept seat or something like that for longer dual sport rides. If you're going to be sitting for a long time, or you're going to go to the Baja or Moab or something like that.
Yep. Other guards I would put on this thing. I always put a rear disc guard on my bikes.
Totally. Yep.
So
does this need the tab guards?
Yep. And this generation of bikes, right here, you can see how small these tabs are. So Slavin's just started making one, and Bulletproof Designs makes one that ties these two together and kind of brace it against the swing arm. Buddy of mine in Mexico, when we were down there last time, low-sided, broke the tab off, $600 swing arm. Yep. So $75 guard versus $600 swing arm.
Capacity of the gas tank is what?
2.25 gallons.
That's awful small.
So you do get good range on this bike, especially before you uncork them. You get 45 to 55 miles per gallon on these things. Once you do an ECU and you uncork it, plan for more around 40 to 45 if you're dual sport riding. So you got a decent range, but they do make, you know, 3.1s, 3.9s, bigger tanks.
I mean, you can get up to a 5 gallon. I mean, I've had a 5.3 gallon aftermarket tank. That gets to be a little too much, but you, me, and a lot of our friends have the 3.2, 3.3, and that gives you as much as 90, 100 miles on a pretty aggressive ride, but you're going to get 120 on a Moab Baja ride. You know, maybe you throw another 1 gallon in your backpack or something like that.
I do prefer the 3.0 to 3.2 gallon tanks. I think they're about the perfect size for most of the riding that I do. I do have a 4 gallon tank on my 450 XCF. That's my big dual sport bike, so it's set up to do longer trips. Otherwise, go out, ride the bike after you respring your bike for your weight if you need to. First thing you should do before guards or anything else, buy springs for your weight. Go out and ride it and see what you think you need to change.
So you can check out more at the True North Motos website, where you can see some bike builds that have been done, and get more ideas on how to really customize this bike. It's a cool bike, and it'll be a lot of fun. A few fine tunings on it, and you're really going to maximize your enjoyment out of it. Thanks again for having us in your shop, Dan.
Hey, thanks for checking it out.